I'm Chris Larson. I am the ADA Program Coordinator for the City of Beaverton.
My name is Eric Myers, and I'm the Programmer Business Analyst at the city, and I manage the asset management system for Public Works.
Hi, I'm Maurice Johns. I'm a JS Specialist at the City of Beaverton.
This presentation is about using asset management to effectively assess and monitor and improve ADA curb ramps. Here's a picture of downtown Beaverton. So Beaverton is located in the heart of the Tualatin Valley between Mount Hood and the Oregon coast. Beaverton combines the best parts of a big city and a peaceful surrounding of a small town. It's located just 7 miles west of Portland. It is the 6th largest city with about a population close to 100,000. So the City of Beaverton, back in 2018, it conducted a comprehensive self-evaluation of its programs, services, activities to update the 1995 transition plan. Periodically, updates and reevaluations are necessary to comply with the requirements of Title II of American Disabilities Act. The result of the self-evaluation and tasks generated by the self-evaluation uncovered that the City of Beaverton has approximately 8,367 ADA ramps within the city right-of-way. Out of those 8,376 ramps, only 573 met accessibility criteria. That's about 7%. The City of Beaverton created a new title position, the ADA Program Coordinator, to manage and oversee the ADA retrofit programs. Public Works maintains a rolling 5-year plan for its streets overlays and ADA ramp work. The 5-year plan is a projection of work that is likely to be performed and is reviewed and updated as needed. ADA ramps are upgraded once a year in advance of the overlays. So typically, I walk the city streets with GPS equipment, recording ADA ramp locations and future ramp locations. For example, such as a T intersection, typically I would find only 2 ramps in the intersections, and the city code requires 6 ramps at those locations. I would record those existing ramp locations and give them a status of most likely non-compliant, saying most of these T intersections are pretty old and need to be reorientated with 2 ramps. And then the locations that don't have existing ramps, I'll give them a status of missing ramps. Using my GPS equipment, it has like a horizontal accuracy of 1/4 inch. I record the perimeter of those ramp locations and gutters and other features. This information I can export to AutoCAD or ArcGIS Pro, and I generate all the bid item quantities for cost estimates to provide an area with a good project estimate. And usually I go out to these projects, I do a project scope and site verifications of existing structures and topography to see if ramp locations and orientations can be met without a design exceptions. Designing these ADA projects are one of my titles, and also coming up with the specifications and going out to bid. I manage these projects. Also, I'm the project manager and inspector out on these, and I also go out and review citizens' requests. The picture here is an architect's idea of how to combine ADA accessible ramps and also provide stairs with an aesthetic view. The top right corner are digital levels we use to verify compliance of ADA ramps. The bottom right is a picture of a Trimble R2 GPS unit. This is the Cityworks Mobile Radar, where I'd go out in the field and verify ADA compliance. It has all the stipulations that are needed to verify compliance with all the slopes and measurements, and there's multiple areas to put in data, including asset pictures and things like that. So the Americans with Disabilities Act, these bullets are the minimum requirements that are needed to comply with the ADA Compliance Act. So public entities that have responsibility or authority over streets, roads, walkways must prepare a schedule to provide curb ramps for pedestrian walkways, cross curbs. Public entities must give priority to walkways servicing state and local government offices and facilities, transportation, places of public accommodation. These schedules must be included as part of the transition plan. Now, the transition plan is really key to being compliant for ADA. A transition plan should contain at a minimum a list of physical barriers in a public entity, facilities that limit accessibility of its programs, activities, or service to individuals with disabilities, a detailed outline of methods to be utilized to remove the barriers and make the facilities accessible. A schedule of taking the necessary steps to achieve compliance with Title II. If the time period for achieving compliance is longer than 1 year, the plan should identify these interim steps that would take during each year of the transition plan. And then the final thing you have to do is you have to name an official responsible person that is going to get this plan in act. Now, if you don't comply with the transition plan and come up with a plan to get all these assets in compliance, you will be in violation of the American Disabilities Act. Now, here's some pretty staggering numbers that other cities have came into violation. The Department of Justice had to come up with a settlement agreement. Now, Oregon, Portland had like $113 million settlement just a few years ago. Bend's $117 million, LA $1.4 billion. Now, these settlement agreements, people might be thinking like this $113 million the city has to pay for a settlement agreement and the city's out this money. It's not the case. These settlement agreements are agreement with the Department of Justice that, hey, the city's going to be doing 15,000 ramps in 12 years, and it's going to cost $113 million. So the money's still going into the infrastructure in that settlement, but now it ties up the budget. Like if you have budget issues and you don't have that money to do it, that's the bad thing about these settlements. It doesn't matter if you have the money or not, you have to come up with the money. You have to get these ramps up in 12 years. And a lot of these, you end up like getting bonds. Like the bottom, these are news clippings. You can see the bottom highlighting that the general fund to bond approximately 3.2 million of ADA curb ramp infrastructure. These are a lot of go bond programs where the city has to put these out to try to come up with money to fix this infrastructure. But to avoid all these issues, if the city just comes up with a transition plan, something that the Department of Justice City Council comes up with an agreement how they're going to deal with the infrastructure to stay out of these ADA violations, that's the way to go. Now, this is a picture of the City of Beaverton's infrastructure, what the ADA ramps are compliant. You can see the majority of it, we have not inventoried the status yet, most of the light blue, but most of it's going to be, it's not compliant. A lot of these don't even have truncated domes. We have about 2,200 missing ramps and about 1,000 plus filing incompliant that we've been updating. And next will be Eric.
All right, thank you, Chris. So let's go. All right, so Chris gave a good background of why we do the program and how it came to be. A couple years ago, we did a quick initial assessment and realized that we were way behind and we needed to assess how many ramps weren't compliant and which weren't, and we needed to do this in a digital way. So we discovered that the best way that we thought we could do it was using the ODOT transportation form that's listed here in white. That's the Oregon Department of Transportation. This is the form that they use when they train their inspectors when going out in the field. And so this form provides us the opportunity to build a quantitative data model in our GIS. And that's beneficial for us because it helps remove subjectivity, right? We didn't want to go out there and assess every single ramp, whether it's good or bad. We wanted to collect the raw data behind whether or not it's good or bad And then that way it provides us the ability to have some long-term dynamic flexibility if these ADA metrics ever change. We don't have to reassess the curb ramp again. We know if the scale slides, the ramp is or isn't in compliance. So we use this form not only because it's used from a training perspective, we also think that it's beneficial from our schema perspective as well. So the Cityworks business process then, once we had that established, it's a traditional Cityworks business process as most of you probably are familiar with. We have a work order, which in this case is the upgrade to ADA work order, and the user can go ahead and attach assets and pre-create the inspections. And so right in this infographic where it turns from blue to yellow is the key piece, right? So we knew that this project was going to take decades. We knew that it was going to take a long time to capture this information. So then we needed to determine what type of inventory software do we want to use. One of the one that's out there that's very common is ESRI Collector. Well, we decided because we were going to be capturing this data for decades and the base data was easily created outside of the operations team. So for example, we could use an orthophoto to easily see where ramps are in the city right now. Just put points down. We also, as Chris had mentioned, based on the engineering design manual and the ADA plan, we need a certain number of ramps at intersections, right? We don't just have one, we may have two. So you can use that business rule to go ahead and put additional points at those locations without needing to go out there to do the inventory. So then, since we were able to capture about 90%, 95% of our base inventory without any problem, we thought that Cityworks was the best solution because then we were just going to be updating attribute inventory. And so we decided to use Cityworks Mobile, and that's part of the two yellow pieces right there where you capture data in the field using Cityworks Mobile, and you would close down an inspection. Technically, you can only mark it complete in Cityworks, but at the end of the day, the user would go into Cityworks Office, close the inspection, and it would auto-write the updates into the GIS, and then as usual, close and review the work order down. And so this is the business process we put together in combination with the data schema. And so before I go into a quick demo here that I recorded, I just wanted to go over some key points. The GIS attributes are updated directly through Cityworks inspections, as I had mentioned. The curb ramps change color, and you'll see that here, dynamically based on their status so that we can see from a visual perspective quickly and easily. And also Cityworks Mobile provides the user an easy platform to capture this information. All right, so what I wanted to do here is just show on the left-hand side what the Cityworks inbox would look like for our ADA program coordinator, Chris. And so this is just a tab that I created that just shows some work orders that are currently open. This work order, upgrade to ADA 36776, is the one that we're currently working on. And I'm going to flip over to it right now. It's a work order that has spanned multiple years. It's based on the contract, and there's 223 assets within that work order. And each asset has an inspection, which most of them are completed. I'm going to open up a open inspection here just to kind of show that our template mirrors our GIS schema, to just prove that this is why we set it up this way, so that when a value is written into one of these fields, it'll write directly into the GIS with the appropriate information. And so what happens is when that occurs, our ramps change colors. So for you to see over here on the right, on the map side, we have different colors throughout the city. All the ramps start at pending if they don't have an inspection. And then as that inspection is completed, they'll jump to yellow, orange, or green. And that's depending on whether or not they meet compliance. Red ramps, however, will be a ramp that isn't yet installed at that corner that needs to be installed. And so in that situation, the ramp wouldn't be blue, it would just go straight to green if it was compliant or not. But just to quickly show, I'm just going to grab a couple of these ramps here to open up the data table. But as you can see, the data that's being captured in the inspection is written directly to the GIS, which then influences the colors of the system. Now, what I'm gonna do here is open my Cityworks Mobile. And so there was that one inspection that was pending. And here they are. Sorry about that. So as you can see, there's the inspections right here for the ramps, and the user can just go in. I mean, if they can geolocate themselves, if they're at the property, it'll bring them right to it in the mobile app. And then within Cityworks Mobile, this is the inspection. They can fill in all the observations, you know, as I showed, the function condition, ramp style, ramp run 1, the running slope, cross slope. They enter in all that information. They can also attach photos here that will be attached to the inspection. A lot of inspectors like to do that so that they have reference. And then once they're done, they just go ahead and mark it complete and sync it. And then what's going to happen is it's going to remove that inspection from mobile. You see that point's gone. And then when Chris goes ahead and logs in, if he's the one that did the inspection, there's a couple different groups, but if it's his group, then he'll go in and he will see that inspection here completed and needing to be reviewed and closed down. And there you can see it right there. And so how Cityworks works is when you close an inspection, if you have it set up, it'll write directly to the GIS. So closing the inspection down would then write to the GIS, which then would instantly change its color if it was compliant from blue to green. And then that's a way that we can quickly know and see our progress for the ADA curb ramp project. All right, so thanks for bearing with me on that video there. Thought it was gonna be easier than running some technical issues. So I have one more slide here before I pass it on to Maurice. As I had mentioned, Chris works for the operations group, the overlay group, and they do about 95% of all the ADA curb ramps in the city, and they're the most experienced group with Cityworks as well. And so what we did is we built the ADA curb ramp process for them and used their guidelines and their metrics of what they wanted. And then more recently, we brought on site development with new construction and engineering for CIP. And these groups, you know, we've had to facilitate some conversations and do some conflict resolution because maybe they want to change to something. But we wanted to keep in mind that, you know, a large majority of all the ramps that are done by the overlay group. And so we wanted to make sure that it meets their process. But we also wanted to have tweaks to have slightly differences between the different groups, but using the same schema and actual centralized database. So that's why, like site development, they really didn't use Cityworks before this, and we had to train them into how to use Cityworks just for this process. And there's been some issues we've run into, and in retrospect, what I've learned is that if you have an SME, a subject matter expert in the group, then what you're able to do is allow that person to deal with the employees on a day-to-day basis and to do training. And it's more powerful than if someone like me in ISD is doing the training directly every single time. And so that's one thing that I try to do with every single group going forward is have that subject matter expert, that Cityworks power user that the employees can go to when they have help. And I feel like that's done a great job. And it's also reduced my technical support workload. So long term, I hope to continue to further integrate those groups into the process and to utilize it more, because if they don't do the ADA curb ramp inspection, then it eventually will fall onto Chris's team's lap when they do the overlay for the street. So these are some key components that I'm trying to continue to work through the process and expand it throughout the entire city. Let me give you control and mute. You should be good to go, Maurice.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Eric. All right. Well, as the GIS specialist, I just kind of want to go over from that perspective of how I was able to take the work that they've been doing and to be able to display that in easy format. And so I'm going to talk specifically about dashboards for ArcGIS. It's formerly known as Operations Dashboard. If you're a GIS professional, you're probably pretty familiar with these as they have been around for several years. But one of the benefits of the dashboards is that they're very easy to create. It allows you to monitor the progress towards the goals that have been set. It's also an excellent communication tool to stakeholders such as a manager or possibly the public. And it's also easy to share as well. It is browser based, so it can be embedded in a website or shared as an independent link as well. Oh, shoot. Okay, so just a little bit of an overview of the workflow that we used. We published our service in ArcGIS Pro to Portal, which is a part of ArcGIS Enterprise. You can also publish from ArcMap, and also you can publish it to ArcGIS Online, but in our case we have Enterprise, so that's how we published our service. And once your service has been published, you add that to a web map. And after that, you create the dashboard and add all of the individual elements that you want. And then the next step after that is to share the dashboard. Okay, so yeah, so the first step of publishing the service from ArcGIS Pro to Portal, this is where you want to customize your service. This is where you would create your symbology, add any definition queries that may be needed, or create any pop-ups. In our case, we have reference data. Our data is pointed towards our enterprise GIS database, and so it's up to date. Basically every 24 hours we have a nightly process that pushes the data that Eric was describing from the crews out in the field to actually in the data that you would see in the dashboard. Our service also includes a table. This is in SQL. This is a view that Eric created from other tables in Cityworks because not all of the information that we wanted to display is in the actual GIS data itself. Okay, so once the service is published to Portal, you'll bring it into a web map. This is where you get to set your extent. You can add your base map to provide some context for your viewers. And here you can also edit or create any pop-ups that maybe you didn't have previously. Okay, a little bit more about dashboards for ArcGIS. This app is installed with Portal with your base installation. I think this was after version 10.6 or later. We're currently on version 10.7.1. I did mention before that this is available on ArcGIS Online, but we decided to use Portal primarily for ease of access. This is a menu item that Eric has added to Cityworks, and because our portal is federated with Cityworks, this provided a single sign-on login experience for the users in Cityworks. Okay, and then creating the dashboard. Again, this is an app in Portal. The first step is you want to add your map element, and then when you do that, all the other elements are then able to access the service. So in our case, we have the ramp service as well as the table. And a few examples of different elements that you can add are charts, indicators, gauges, and lists, and there are a few others as well. Okay, I'm going to do a little demo here. Okay. All right, so when you're in Portal or ArcGIS Online, you come up here to the app launcher, select your dashboards, you then create a new dashboard, and then once you're named it and saved it, you can start adding your elements. And so this is our actual live dashboard, and here we can see all of the categories that Chris and Eric were mentioning previously. Here is a gauge that is tracking our progress, our non-compliant status, exception needed, our pending, and our missing. And then as far as the 3 different work groups, this allows us to see a time series of what they've been able to do over the last 5 years. Over here on the right, we have a line graph that basically shows what they've been up to for the past 12 months, and this is a rolling calendar. And then over here, we have individual gauges for each of the work groups by fiscal year. Then up here in the top right, we have our map element. Individual assets can be selected. And then an attribute table comes up for those. And then we also have a legend as well. You can also add base map selectors as well if you wanted to show aerial imagery, for instance. Right here is where you add your different elements. I didn't list all of these, but as you can see, there's quite a variety of different things that you can add to your dashboard. So I recognize that our dashboard is maybe not the most exciting dashboard as it's basically communicating numbers, but we do have some future things that we would like to do. Let me just go back to our slide here. Some of the things that we're hoping to do in the future is we want to add some financial information to our dashboard, as well as add some boundaries, such as our downtown, which is an area of focus, as well as our neighborhoods. And then also hopefully add some real-time tracking for the overlay group. They're the ones that are working throughout the year and continuously adding more information. So it'd be great to add a dashboard that's more specific to their workflow versus just general numbers as the city overall. All right, that's it for me. I will pass this back to Eric.
Yeah, so appreciate you coming on in and watching our presentation. As you can see on the screen here, we have all of our contacts listed, emails and phone numbers. So feel free to reach out if you have any other additional questions, or just want to chat about how we did the project and what we plan to do going forward. Hopefully, I would suspect maybe by the end of the year, we might have that second phase of the dashboard that Maurice was talking about. I think it's very, very valuable. The one thing that we're missing is we just need to capture that information in the asset management system. And we have an inspection template to do it now. And then once we have captured some data, then we'll start feeding it directly into the final product. So thank you once again, and hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.